Okay, welcome again to our Tuesday, November 19th regular monthly school board meeting. And we're going to first begin with the roll call. Clerk Oswald, if you could do the roll call, please.
Turn my microphone.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Member Eder.
Here.
Member Kirby.
Here.
Chair Loeffler-Kemp.
Here.
Member Lofold.
Here.
I am here. Member Sandsted.
Here.
Member Trinka is excused tonight. Superintendent Gronseth.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent Horton.
Here.
Deputy Clerk Erickson. Secretary Melinda Tebow. And Emma Natali. And Vanessa Farrell. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. So we have 6 members here. We have a quorum. And the next item on our agenda is to everyone stand, and we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. May I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Moved by Member Sandsted, seconded by, Eder. Okay. Moved by Member Eder, seconded by Member Lofold. Is there any discussion? Member Kirby? Okay.
Oh, thank you. I would like to remove, I don't have the item here, which item it is on the Business Committee report concerning the Essentia contract, to definitely postpone this until next month.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion to remove the Essentia contract, which is in the Business Committee, to move it to next month for further discussion. So is there any further, okay, we have a second. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Okay. Member Sandsted?
And I'm sorry if I missed something or didn't follow this, but I'm just wondering what our reason is for pushing it to December.
There has been some discussion that I've received from the community and some question about some of the language. The current agreement will continue until next month, and it just gives both Essentia and the district time to finalize some of that language.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of removing this item with the Essentia contract, please say aye. Aye. Okay, and then do we need to go back and approve the agenda again? Or have we? Okay, so just want to go back then again to approve the agenda with that removed. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay. Okay, and then we'll move on to the next item, which is reading and approving minutes. And we had a number of meetings this month. Thank you, board, for coming to all of you who could attend the different meetings that we had. So just go through this quickly. There will be a lot of opportunity to do a motion in a second, so share that wealth of doing that. So the first minutes that we want to approve are a regular school board meeting on October 15th. Could I have a motion to approve? Okay, moved by Member Sandstead. Is there a second? Seconded by Member Eder. Is there any discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the regular school board meeting of October 15th, please say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 6-0. The next is a special closed session personnel issue meeting that was held on October 29th, 2019. Could I have a motion to approve, please? Moved by Member Sandstead, seconded by Member Lofold. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 6-0. The next item is the special meeting seating of our new board member on November 1st. Could I entertain a motion to approve that? Moved by Member Eder. That is appropriate. And seconded by Member Sandstead. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 6-0. The next item is the special meeting with the superintendent search RFPs. That was the meeting we needed to reschedule to November 8th. Can I have a motion to approve that meeting, please? Okay. Moved by Member Sandstead, seconded by Member Lofold. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 6-0. And then the next special meeting was to canvass the votes of the general election on November 12th. This is required by state law. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes, please? So moved. Moved by Member Lofold, seconded by Member Oswald. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 6-0. Thank you. And then the last special meeting was a special closed session, our annual superintendent evaluation on November 12th. Can I have a motion to approve? Moved by Member Lofold. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Member Kirby. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Now, we're going to move on to the next piece, which is our school and community recognition. So board members, if we want to go down, thank you.
Members of the board, this month I'm pleased to introduce Dion Grenier and Abrina Uridia for recognition. Dion and Abrina have been an important part of Denfeld's Clock Tower Cafe Culinary Arts program for 4 years. They've each volunteered over 100 hours in after-school community and catering events. In addition to providing an alternative lunch at Denfeld, Clock Tower Cafe provides catering service for local organizations with anywhere from 20 to 400 guests. The program caters events ranging from this annual meeting to Duluth's Teachers of the Year reception and the Mayor's State of the City address. Students learn professional cooking skills. They learn how to run and manage a deli, from marketing ideas to product options, and learn time management, kitchen skills, and safety. In the advanced class, they explore business management, human resource issues, and customer satisfaction. The course emphasizes strong leadership ability, problem-solving skills, and reliability. Money raised by catering is used to fund Clock Tower Cafe uniforms as well as provide students with 4 to 6 field trips per year. They visit places like St. Paul College for culinary arts, Essentia Health Nutrition Services, Burnett Dairy Farm, and local restaurants are a great learning experience. Dion and Audrey were inspired by your dedication to the coursework and most of all by your willingness to advance your skills and knowledge. Thank you for your example.
Okay, thank you, community. Because we've had such a already busy time before the meeting, and we also just found out a short time before the meeting that we needed to do some shuffling, not having all of our board members here of just different roles and responsibilities. Apologize for that, but before our school and community, before our audience comments, we always like to read our vision statement and our tools of civility, and our two students are going to be helping with that. So Emma and Vanessa, did you decide which piece you're going to do? Okay, I'll turn on your light. Who's going to start?
Community vision and priorities for Duluth schools. We will build on our shared beliefs and values of unity, high achievement, and responsible use of resources to create Duluth public schools and classrooms that are safe, supportive, and inclusive. We will work to inspire every student to achieve their potential and prepare students to lead productive, fulfilling lives as citizens of Duluth and the wider world.
11 Tools of Civility. This school board recognizes 11 tools of civility that will provide increased opportunities for civil discourse in order to find positive resolutions to the issues that face our community. These tools include pay attention, listen, be inclusive, don't gossip, show respect, be agreeable, apologize, give constructive criticism, take responsibility, be honest and care for others, and show your evidence and share your reasoning.
Okay, thank you, Member Emma and Member Vanessa, for sharing that. And then Clerk Oswald, if you'll go over the kind of process for audience participation.
Thank you. Information to know when you sign up to speak at board meetings. Persons wishing to address the school board must sign in prior to the meeting, listing their name, address, and the matter which you will speak, right over there. If you have any handouts for the board, please give them to the school board secretaries located in the back of the room, over there. Persons addressing the board will speak in the order in which they signed up, over there. So, each person addressing the board will have 3 minutes. Persons addressing the board may not merge time their time in order to allow one person to speak for more than 3 minutes. The clerk of the board, me, will start the stoplight timer there at the start of each person's time. A green light means go, a yellow light means to start wrapping up, and a red light means to stop. Persons addressing the board shall confine their comments to matters pertaining to the agenda or relevant to matters of administrative concern.
Thank you, Clerk Oswald. And so again, we are to the part for public comment, and folks will come over there to the podium. And our first speaker that's signed up is Ethan Fisher.
Good evening. This is becoming habit for me to come here before the board, and I will continue to do that. I'd like to bring some good news to the board of what's going on with our teachers in our district. About a month ago, I sent out an email to all certified staff and to all of our building administrators looking for nominations for Education Minnesota's Teacher of the Year, and within a few days, I was flooded with response. I'm pleased to say that this year we had 16 teachers nominated by colleagues for Teacher of the Year. They were from a variety of areas. We had pre-K, we had K through 5, second grade, third grade teachers specifically. We had teachers in English, social studies, art and Phi-Ed. We had special education teachers, speech and language pathologist. And so we had a very diverse group of teachers that were recommended by their colleagues. As I read through with the committee the responses to why their colleagues nominated them, there was a part where we asked, the nominee is inspirational in the following ways. I looked at it and I thought it read like an oration of the future of Duluth Public Schools. It was very uplifting and good information. I'm pleased to say that our committee has chosen 3 of those teachers. They have all agreed to move on to the next process. It's a lengthy process. I think Member Lofald can attest to that. But the 3 teachers that have agreed to move on include Linda Puglisi, a K through 5 Phi-Ed teacher at Stowe; Brian Youngman, an English teacher at Denfeld High School; and Nicole Jensen, a social studies teacher at Lincoln Park Middle School. So the 3 of them will be receiving packets from Education Minnesota so that they can go on to the next phase of being recognized as Minnesota Teacher of the Year through Education Minnesota. So it's a privilege for me to bring that. We started out the evening hearing all kinds of nice things about our newly tenured teachers, and now hopefully this continues that with recognizing that we have so many teachers that our colleagues look at as inspirational in the classroom and what they do on a daily basis. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ethan. The next speaker is Chris Bold.
Hello, school board members. As mentioned, my name is Chris Vold. I'm a teacher on special assignment, serving as the coordinator for the district's online high school. It seems like oftentimes at these meetings and in the news, we only hear about the struggles that the district's going through. Thanks for allowing me a few minutes of your time tonight so that I can share some positive and encouraging ISD 709 information regarding a growing and highly successful Duluth Public School. Academic Excellence Online for grades 9 through 12 was created in 2014 at the request of former Assistant Superintendent Eddie Crawford, who saw online learning as the future of education, a way to retain our students looking for more flexible options and an opportunity to attract more students to the district through cutting-edge creativity and innovative approaches to teaching and learning. His vision has led to a thriving school viewed by our online colleagues and by the Department of Education as a statewide leader in online education. Of the 33 other online providers in the state, about a dozen others fit a similar profile as AEO. With little to no advertising, we have so far attracted a constantly growing 100 out-of-district students from around the state, while providing over 450 of our in-district students with an online opportunity of similar format and on the same learning management system as the students at the University of Minnesota, UWS, and CSS, just to name a few. We know this because our teachers who have built our own scoped, sequenced, and state standard aligned courses approved by MDE and the NCAA were consulted by these universities as they were transitioning to the same learning management system that we were using. We're state leaders in the digital advancement of classrooms. Some of our students take a full schedule of classes, while others may only take 1, 2, or maybe 3 classes. Nonetheless, we've gone from 66 part-time students in 2014 to over 560 students and growing today due to the hard work of our dedicated staff along with the vision and opportunity provided by the district. AEO is not the only school to benefit from our impressive staff. We've digitized the credit recovery and independent study programs as well as the seat-based program at the Area Learning Center, which in turn also benefits the graduation rates of Denfeld and East High Schools. We have evidence to prove that our digital content and strategies have been effective tools helping to close the achievement gap. In 2018-2019, the ALC awarded over 1,100.5 class credits, and starting with summer school this past summer, we've already awarded over 307.5 class credits, which is a pace increase of about 69% from 2018 to 2019. We've done a self-study and developed a hybrid schedule which allows us to meet the needs of our unique student population while also generating full ADM. We've also created an ALC outreach schedule where our staff rotates to the high schools after school Monday through Thursday to help the students meet their state-mandated FaceTime requirements and help them better their credit earning chances. Our success speaks for itself. We're making a difference in the lives of a great many students, as well as helping Duluth Public Schools offer quality programming that none of our local neighbors do. Education has moved beyond the brick and mortar walls of the classroom. The digital age is the future of education. We could be a resource for the district to use in addressing class sizes, equity issues, scheduling limitations, graduation rates, and the achievement gap. Our staff would embrace the challenge to lead our district in the digital advancement of all our district classrooms. AEO ALC has much to share not only with our students but also our colleagues around the district. We would welcome the opportunity to come to the table with the board and our district leadership to discuss creative ways for us to help problem solve some of our most urgent district needs. Thank you for your time and for listening to my thoughts on the value of AEO and ALC.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks for your leadership as that program got established. The next speaker is Jacob Laurent.
Thank you, Board, for the time, and thank you for supporting public education. I appreciate you guys. I feel honored to be here representing Piedmont Elementary, a place where I truly feel we work as a team to better our students. I'm going on about 13 hours right now, so forgive me if I have some lapses. Last June, myself, 3 Piedmont colleagues, Paul Winkler, Bernie Burnham from MDE, we earned a grant called the 50/50 grant. And through this, we were able to collaborate and dissect our data, which allowed us to hone in on one major issue in our school. And the findings were surprising yet not. As we looked at MCA scores, office discipline referrals, our backpack program, free and reduced lunch, attendance, it became clear that the initiatives that we implement in our school will not see the intended success unless kids are in our building. On a side note, the data we examined also showed that the attendance dilemma is not just a Piedmont concern, but is rather a problem that is striking all of our Western schools. We're looking at about a little over 80% in terms of attendance, which means the average kid is 4 to 5 days in our building. And as we looked at all that data, and as my mentor Beth Shimon says, data drives decisions, so we collect a crazy amount. We found one thing in common with all that different numbers, and it was attendance. Lower attendance equals higher ODRs, office discipline referrals. Lower attendance usually would equal lower MCA scores, which of course that correlated, which allowed us to hone in and focus solely on attendance in the goal of raising our achievement and the goal of lowering our office discipline referrals. And we found that through this, in the goal to raise attendance, a lot came through parent awareness, through student engagement. Are kids excited to be at our school? Are they helping motivate their parents to help them get to school? And through our initiative and work for the last 2 months, and much of this is after school hours as a team, we have had some pretty awesome numbers, which I'd like to share. 2 years ago, if we're looking at our office discipline referrals, we're at about 230 through September and October. And this is an elementary school, K-5, that's averaging over 100 a month. This year, through our first 2 months, we had 94. So in terms of engaging our community and the goal to increase attendance, we are also making gains in other spots. When we're looking at our attendance, last year 248 students had 9 or more absences through their first 2 months of school. That is 48% of our population. 5 students this year have 9 or more. So we went from 248 to 9, and just want to share that great news. Which is less than 1% of our population. And 11 students have 6 or more absences so far this year out of 514. And really that number does get pretty skewed in terms of we have many students who miss over half of the school year. We strongly believe that attendance and strong family engagement need to happen in the elementary schools. It's the foundation for our upper level, middle, and high schools. We hope to apply and achieve the 50-50 grant in the future to help us sustain this growth. However, there are limitations. It does not pay for any salaries. And it is a roadblock that we keep hitting when we are trying to address attendance. Turns into more work for all of us, or we have gains for all. And we just hope that this work, as well with MDE, is something that we can create a blueprint for future schools when addressing attendance, as this is a national problem. So thank you for your time today, and just wanted to share our data. So thanks.
Great, thank you, Jacob, and congratulations again on your tenure. The next speaker is Teresa O'Halloran-Johnson.
I want to thank you all for serving our community as elected school board members and dedicating yourself to supporting our students. I'm here this evening because I want to respectfully require that a member of the community of people with disabilities be included in your superintendent search. And I'll tell you why. I have the honor of working with ISD 709 staff who are amazingly committed. And I have the honor of working with passionate parents and some amazing students who just happen to have disabilities. And in our world, people with disabilities, children and adults, continue to underperform every single population in every single way. They need a voice at every single level in all of the decision making. I am not that person. It needs to be a person who lives with someone who has a disability or somebody who has graduated from this school district who has a disability. We need to do a better job as a community because we know that people with disabilities end up living in poverty And when a person with a disability intersects as a member of a community who is already impoverished, who is a gender, when it intersects with gender identity or with geographic areas or race, the multiplication factor is increased by an exponential amount. We as a community lose what could be amazing members of our community and really important economic drivers of our community because we fail to include people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. The next speaker is Christine Koosman.
Hello, my name is Christine Koosman, and I'm not a speaker, so I work for the transportation for the school district. I've been here for 14 years, 10 years with them, and we have a really bad building. And I took some pictures for you guys and hope you pass around to see what our building looks like. It's a mess. So I'm really hoping that I came down here and I can get something accomplished with this. The land is contaminated. The building itself, when it rains, you'll see the pictures. There's buckets on the windowsill to catch the water. There's paint coming off in the break room. There's a little heater in the break room that heats our break room because we don't even have heat. But I talked to the superintendent, and we had a really good conversation, and I guess my next step was this. And we were in the red plan, and I don't know what happened to that because I'm not originally from here, but I do know we were supposed to be in something with that, and I'm kind of hoping that we can come together as a unit and fix our building. That's all I ask, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. If you have any questions on the pictures, please come and see me. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. The next speaker is John Ramos.
Good evening, board members. My name is John Ramos. I'm the publisher of the Duluth Monitor, the area's finest news source. I'd like to speak with you about your agenda setting sessions, which are presently only allowed to be attended by the board chair and the board clerk. What is the downside of opening these meetings to the public? Why is there such opposition to that within the administration? By opening the meetings, you would carry on doing exactly the same business as before, but in public view. The city council sets their agenda in public view. The county board sets their agenda in public view. If the school administration fears public scrutiny of their actions, they shouldn't be doing those things anyway, and open meetings would help them avoid the temptation. The reasons that are given for having closed agenda sessions are not compelling. For example, one reason given is that if the meetings were open, that would make more work for everybody. It's hard to see how that would be the case. If information was shared with all board members simultaneously, that would be more efficient. They could get their questions answered on the spot rather than having to track down answers later. Another reason I hear is that other school districts in the state have closed agendas, so we should have them too. Why worry about what other districts do? If we don't want the administration to have meetings where they can hide the jail records of assistant superintendents, then we should open the meetings. Open agenda sessions create a more informed school board and a more informed public. As a reporter, I know that agenda sessions are where the best discussions occur. I'd say that at least 3/4 of the news stories that you read about the city council and the county board rely on information that the reporter got at agenda sessions. To cut the majority of the school board out of those discussions and instead ask them to rely on whatever information the board chair chooses to filter through to them does them and the public a grave disservice. It would be so easy to let the public attend these meetings that it's hard to see why you don't. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, John. The next speaker is Audrey, Devine, Eller.
Hi, thanks for being here. Thanks for your service on the board. I am speaking under two hats right now. First, as the chair of the Education Equity Committee for the NAACP in Duluth. I want to remind the board that the NAACP formally requested that 2 members from the NAACP serve on any committee relevant to the hiring of the new superintendent, including but not limited to screening applications, composing of the questions on the interview committee, and hiring of the search firm. We are at the stage of hiring of the search firm, and there has not yet been any community involvement officially in those decision-making processes at this point. I would like to reiterate that there is precedent for community members being on those searches in this district, and so that committee should include community members from NAACP and Duluth Indigenous Commission, as well as a member of disability communities. Now I want to have on a personal hat. I want to share my personal thoughts about the superintendent search. This is a main priority, that the search find and hire a superintendent who can increase equity in our district. This has been a theme over the last 2 years for the board and for the district. It's super, super important. And so that being said, I have 2 thoughts about that. One is about the search process. In addition to the inclusion of community members on the search committee, I would ask that the search chair be someone other than the board chair. In the interest of sharing the load across the board members and increasing community confidence about the transparency of the search process. Whether or not there are actually problems on the board, there is certainly community suspicion of problems, and sharing that search chairing would help increase public trust in the processes that are going on. It's notable, the News Tribune has had like 4 headlines about the district in the last week, so this is a big issue. Secondly, I want to talk about the search firm. I want to recommend BWP over MSBA as at the search. Those are the options that we're left with. BWP talked in their pitch about students. They were the only firm that talked about students in their pitch. And they focused on equity. They read our mission statement. They talked about our mission statement in their pitch. They specifically talked about ways they could involve community and staff in the process. They have national experience, but they have been involved in Reimagine Minnesota campaigns. Their managing director is a Black woman, and they have 35 or 45% women and people of color on their consultancy staff. So they have experience with equity issues, and as a professional search firm, they know how to run a professional, unbiased search, including help crafting the posting, use of rubrics, use of off-list references. These are all basic things for a search firm to be using. MSBA didn't even mention students in their pitch to the board. They talked about serving the board. Sorry, folks, we don't serve you. We serve the students in the district, and I want a search firm that recognizes that. MSBA's main pitch was, we know you. Frankly, Minnesota is not doing so hot on equity, so I would like that not to be the bar we use for hiring a search firm. So that said, there may be some compromise with BWP about making all of the applications available to at least to the search committee. That was one thing that I was concerned about. Anyway, thank you for your service. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Audrey. The next speaker is Betty Green.
Chair Loeffler-Kemp, Superintendent Gronseth, and members of the school board. My name is Betty Green, and I am speaking about the boundary study, the superintendent search, and agenda setting from the perspectives of equity and transparency. I attended your November 18th Boundary Study Update meeting. I was quite surprised to hear that the 15 initial scenarios were narrowed down to just 4 scenarios for the second round of focus groups to consider. Is it really the case that a full 11 scenarios weren't worth considering for this next step? I find that hard to believe. In the interest of transparency, I believe that all of those initial scenarios should be made available for the public to see. Aspects of those scenarios could be of great interest to people, and they might reflect nuances or insights of residents that the consultant does not recognize. Thus, I concur with a request by the Duluth branch of the NAACP that all scenarios be made public now and that subsequent steps be made public as they are generated. I also again request that you involve representatives from underserved communities in all search functions and be transparent in how community members are chosen. Finally, please open up your agenda sessions so that all school board members receive all pertinent information. Transparency is extremely important rather than continuing a secretive process that lessens the community's trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. The next speaker is Ashley Grimm.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Grimm. I am here as the Vice Chair of the Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Commission is here to support a process that engages the community in a meaningful and transparent way, especially underrepresented populations throughout the superintendent search and upcoming changes that affect our children in our community. We also want to acknowledge the work that the school board has done and commitment to advancing equity goals. The Human Rights Commission encourages the school board to work in partnership with the Indigenous Commission, NAACP. We fully support their request here tonight, and families affected by education disparities in our city. We stand in partnership and commitment with you, and thank you for your work. I know it's a hard job that all of you do, and you do a lot of work for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. The next speaker is Danny Dumfree.
Hello. Today I'm here to talk to you about the transparency and community inclusion in the process for hiring the superintendent for the Duluth Public Schools. This position is vital in deciding the future of our students during a time when they are most impressionable and at a time when they are developing their self-esteem, self-worth, and plans for their future. The superintendent will decide the direction for this district and the priorities the district sets for our children. This includes climate for our schools, what equity and inclusion will look like, what access for our students will have to community resources within our schools, and what, if any, priority we will have in closing the achievement and the opportunity gaps that are rampant in our system. I cannot stress enough the importance of having a voice in this process from those who have historically been marginalized within this community. We do not have voices on this board. These voices need to come from this community. When the police department hires a police chief, people who are interviewed for this position make several community appearances with those populations that have historically underrepresented in their administration. They are interviewed by those communities, and those communities have input in that process. I would argue that the superintendents of schools is an even more important position to this community than the process should be implemented here as well. I would echo my fellow community members in asking that you seek out representatives for the NAACP as well as the Indigenous Commission to have a meaningful input in the hiring of the superintendent. I would also ask that you include someone from the disability community where inclusion in the full school process has been met with resistance, many students not even allowed to come for a full day of school. I have many students in your buildings are in pain and are struggling and asking for help. We need to have a superintendent that recognizes the difficulty of our marginalized populations and understand the complexity as well as the needs of students with physical, mental, and cognitive struggles. We need a superintendent that will be responsive to the needs of our entire community. This community deserves a meaningful and inclusive input in the process, and we are here to ask that you let us have input into our children's future. I would also like to ask you to open up your agenda-setting meetings so that everyone has access to pertinent information. Transparency is very important within our community, and transparency can help to repair some of the relationships for the communities that have distrust in our educational system. I would also ask that the equity tool that was adopted by this school board be used not only in your sessions, but also in some of our community sessions. After reading some of the boundary studies that were done, there's some disproportionalities in there that would affect some marginalized communities. And I believe if that equity tool was used, that maybe I wouldn't be here having to talk about this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danny. The next speaker is Mary Owen.
Buju, my name is Mary Owen. I am a member of the Duluth Indigenous Commission and also a member of the Education Equity Alliance. I want to start out by thanking you, School District, for this nice report. It highlights some of the disparities that we continue to see year after year after year after year in our school district, and I very much appreciate your owning that issue this year. Oftentimes in the past, we have heard all the positives, and we never hear about how some of our students are doing, so miigwech for that. I also want to say that, or I want to start out by saying that I am, as some of you know, I'm a Native American physician and I treat only Native American patients. And one of the biggest issues that we see in taking care of Native American patients is distrust. There's a huge issue of distrust. And if we can't get patients to trust a system and to come in the door, then we can't change the health disparities. And I would dare say that our health disparities are almost as bad as our education disparities. Almost. So the key here is building trust. And I teach medical students about this, and I think that the school board can do. I think that the school board could use a lesson in the same issue. If we have distrust by community members, we're less likely to get them to come in. We're less likely to get families to come in, students to come in, and to help to us all to address these disparities. And I don't believe that we're ever going to see significant change until we get that buy-in from our community. And I believe the way to get buy-in is to have trust by your community members. And I have a couple of ideas on where to start. So first one is they're both issues that have been raised tonight, and the first one is making an open process, using the equity tool as it was intended, as an actual tool, not something in the back of our heads, but an actual tool when it comes to the hiring of a superintendent. And if you were truly to do that, then you would go out to the communities of color, underrepresented communities, including families from poor and disadvantaged homes, and get representation from them on this search committee. There absolutely must be representation by all groups on this search committee if we're going to see any significant change in the superintendent. I can't imagine a more important role in the coming 10 years than that position. We need someone who is intentional about equity, not just talking the talk. The next way that I could see you building some trust is by doing what board members, and I'd like to thank you for this, board members Sandstad, Oswald, Trinka, and our new school board member, Eder, pardon me, have already done, and that's addressing this issue of making the agendas an open process. I agree with the previous speaker. There's absolutely no reason it shouldn't be, and if you want to prove to your community that you're truly listening and working for change, then you need to open that process up. So again, there are different ways that we can work to build trust in our communities and to get some buy-in, and these are just a couple of ways that you can do it. So miigwech for your work, and carry on.
Thank you, Mary. The next speaker is Adrian Payne.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is my son, Mozzie. He came with me tonight. I just wanted to take a second to talk about my son and his IEP. My son is in an autism classroom. He's on the spectrum, and he's severely autistic. He's almost completely nonverbal, and he communicates mostly through sign language. On his IEP, it states sign language all over it, letting everybody know this is how he communicates. I found out last year that none of his teachers knew sign language. Completely wasted a whole year. This year, we switched from Denfeld to East, and again, no one knows sign language. When I brought this subject up, and I've tried to talk to people about it, I was told because he's not deaf and hard of hearing, there are no services for him. So he continues to go to school and not learn the language that he chose. There are so many things in his day that he does not have control over. He cannot say, hey, today I want to do this, or I did this today. But he clearly chose sign language as his language. He wanted that. And I think as a district, you have a responsibility to uphold that. That's his language. That's how he's going to learn. Right now, currently, he's out of school. We had to fight with his teacher because she wanted to send him to work program 3 to 4 days out of the week, knowing full well my son has no language at all. They had a device they used last year. No one was trained on it. It was supposed to go from school to home, and it never came home until the last day of school. Now he has a new device with a new program on it that we're supposed to be starting this year, hoping that this year will be successful. I'm just a mother concerned about my child. I'm a face that probably isn't seen very often, and I'm a little disheartened that there's not a lot of people with my skin color sitting here today. But I care. This skin color cares. And I care about my son a whole lot. So I'm coming here today just for you to do something. I want him to go back to school. I want him to get the education he deserves and live out a quality of life. And I think that we can work together and make that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian and Mozzie. And the next speaker is Kevin Square Brown.
Wow. It doesn't get much more real than that. My name is Kevin Square Brown. Speaking on my own behalf today. I appreciate the district taping and making available the videos of the official school board meetings. It's something you do that contributes both to transparency and access, so thank you for that. While I strongly support the expectation of meaningful community involvement in the superintendent search, my comments tonight relate primarily to Monday's boundary study update. My concerns align with the questions voiced by members Sandstead and Eder yesterday. In my work with schools, organizations, and government bodies, in their effort to be inclusive and equitable, I stress the importance of two things. One, building equity and accountability into the processes, and two, examining subjective decision points because they often have significant impact on the eventual outcomes. One example would be a hiring process that allows a person selecting the final candidate to disregard the recommendations of a hiring committee and hire a candidate that did not rise to the top through the extensive screening process. While on the surface, this process could look inclusive, in reality, the power resides in a single person with unfettered discretion. When the discrepancy between the hiring committee recommendations and the decision-maker's choice is not acknowledged or revealed, the decision-making process lacks both meaningful inclusion and transparency. In the boundary revision process, the development of the criteria that would guide the initial focus groups, and then, even more significantly, the filtering of the 15 draft plans into 4 which emerged, represents the kind of subjective, and again, often unacknowledged, priorities of the select few given the role of doing the filtering. We heard from Matt that the 15 draft plans were filtered through what he called the goals of the district, and that inevitably those goals were at times in tension with one another. Whose sense of what is most important guided what was included and what was cast aside? One way to assess which goals are prioritized is to look at which goals are best met by the various options which survive the filtering process. We can also look at which criteria are reflected in the option summaries. The summaries presented at yesterday's board meeting failed to articulate the impact of each scenario on the demographics with regards to race and class at the middle school and high school level, when other data was revealed in much greater detail. What does this say about the value of meaningfully balancing our schools east-west? The consultant and the district have the data and aren't sharing it. I'm left wondering why. If the board wants a transparent process, why would you allow this information to be withheld from yourselves and the community? What purpose is served? And finally, as I watched the video of yesterday's boundary meeting, I was struck by a pattern. Board members asked questions of Superintendent Gronseth, and Board Chair Leffler-Kemp repeatedly cited knowing of discussions that had occurred regarding those topics. I was left wondering if there is some inner circle that has privileged access to and perhaps influence over district decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. The next speaker is Cruz Mendoza.
My name is Cruz Mendoza. I've spoken to you before. I'm not comfortable doing it ever, and I'm not comfortable now, but that doesn't matter. I want to remind you that last year, this board, not counting the new people that are on the board, voted unanimously to pass an equity policy. And that was a commitment that was made to this community and to people in this school district. Excuse me one second. I forgot one thing. This last year was the first time that the equity policy was somewhat introduced. Last year at Laura MacArthur Elementary, of the African American students in math, 76.5% did not meet standards. In the subject of reading at Laura MacArthur, 70.6% did not meet standards. At Lincoln Park Middle School last year, the first year of the equity policy, 63.2% of African Americans did not meet standards. Reading, the number at Lincoln Park Middle School was 59% did not meet. Subject of science, 75% did not meet standards. At Denfeld, of the African American students, 83.3% did not meet standards. In the subject of reading, 45.5% did not meet standards. In the subject of science, 62.5% did not meet standards. And if this was the first year that all of you work with equity, you have a lot to learn. I made a point of telling people when this entire equity policy was going through that unless you included people from this community up and down the strata, that these are the kind of results would probably happen. And I'm sorry to say that I was right. So in terms of being historically marginalized communities, equity means that you do something to bring someone to the same level as someone else. Okay, and in that sense, when you talk about having people of color and low-income people and disabled people a part of the search process, you know, I'm not going to ask you for 2 or 3 members. I'm going to ask for equity. I'm going to ask for you to make up what it is that you allow to happen for decade after decade after decade after decade. That's equity. 2 or 3 is not. And in opening up the agenda sessions, you know, what I can say is transparency is like absolutely essential for this community to trust what it is that happens in this school district. These families whose numbers that I just gave out, they don't trust this community. Why should they? 83.3% not meeting standards? I mean, and a lot of these numbers I gave you are worse than they were the year or the year before. So when it comes to transparency, I was a part of this attendance boundary exercise that we went through, okay? And to us, what we were told was, these are numbers. We're not going to deal with kind of the populations that make these numbers up and the needs that they have and the services that are provided or not provided to them. That is something that I expected would happen in the next rounds of this attendance boundary issue. That didn't happen. I haven't heard one word up until this morning when I saw the paper that this is what it is that we had come up with. Are we going to have a chance to go back and say, correct this? This is what you missed. So another thing about transparency, this district is under the mandate of the Department of Education and the Department of Human Rights to do something about the disparate disciplines that exist in this community amongst low-income people, unless students of color and special ed students. I have no idea what it is that is going on with that work and what has happened and whether or not that has improved or not. And I have been a part of the Education Equity Advisory Committee and this district as an employee for the last 26 years. I have no idea what is happening with that. And I asked the question tonight, and I still didn't get an answer. So I want to thank you for the work that you do. I want to hope that you do better. I want to hope that you keep the commitments that you make, because we need you to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cruz. And last speaker is Andrea Gelb.
Hi. Thank you for your service and to the service that the people who've already spoken give. They tirelessly also look at what's happening here. I was very proud when I made Minnesota my home in 1979. Imagine my surprise when I found out our ranking in terms of equity. It's appalling where we stand nationally. You have certainly tried various initiatives as reflected in the annual report you've given today, and there's still much work to do. Excuse me, but saying doing things the same way is, when it's not working, is considered the definition of insanity. In light of the continued work, I'd like to make the following requests. The NAACP, as you've heard from other speakers, has asked to be represented on the committees that are involved with the superintendent search, and that would go for other marginalized communities also. That's to be on the committees, not at focus groups, but on the committees. I would also suggest that of the superintendent search firms, BWP makes the more compelling case, and I think Audrey already addressed a number of those issues. Lastly, until my retirement a few years ago, I worked with Josh Gorham from the time he started with St. Louis County Public Health Human Services. And I found him to be an inspiration and someone who very much walked his truth. So when he took a leave from this board, I listened to his concerns. And in light of that, and this is not speaking for Josh, but speaking for myself, I would suggest that another person be the chair for the conducting of the superintendent search. And again, I thank you very much for what I can't imagine is a more difficult task and a more important task than looking after our next generation. And again, I extend that to the people who've already spoke and who keep a watchful eye out for that generation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. I don't believe we have any other speakers, so we will move on now to the next item on the agenda, and that's reading communications. And we did not have any communications this month. The next item then is the report of the superintendent, and we start with the superintendent, and then we'll hear from our Denfeld and East student reps. So Superintendent Grunset. Okay.
Thank you, Chair Laffer-Kemp. Again, earlier this evening, we celebrated our newly tenured staff and held our annual World's Best Workforce meeting. I want to congratulate the 42 teachers and 2 principals who were granted tenure this year. I know how difficult those first years in a position, whether it be a teacher or a principal, can be, and we are proud of everything that they've accomplished and in earning their tenure. I'd also like to thank all of our students who participated in that event and the annual meeting by sharing their musical talents. We had Sterling Strings here playing, and we also had students from the Clock Tower Cafe at Denfeld who have been all over the community. We heard a couple of them have put in 100 hours of volunteering in the community, and at the same time are learning about their chosen career and tech program in the culinary arts. Their participation made it a more special event for everyone involved, and we have a lot of appreciation for what they do. Today, and I want to say this evening, there are quite a few comments about the boundary process, and I want to give up a big thanks to our student reps who met with a couple of the groups today. As we continued with the focus groups regarding the boundary study, we have the opportunity to meet with 7 groups so far, and we'll continue tomorrow. Our student school board reps, as I said, were involved with about 40 of their classmates between the 2 schools. It is great to hear their perspective and gather their input as we continue the process. Each of our 4 scenarios that the focus groups looked at have unique aspects that have benefits and challenges with all of them. And the work will continue as the scenarios continue to be adjusted based on that feedback that's being gathered by all of those groups. In January, there will be another round of meetings to gather input. The January meetings will be open to the public, and all of the information will be included online through surveys online, and also we'll make sure that there's hard copies available at all of our schools, so if people don't have access online, they still have access to all of the information and can provide feedback. And then the school board would be considering any changes in February or March, and some aspects of the boundary change could be in place as early as next fall. And an implementation plan would be developed at the same time. You know, it's been quite a while since the community engaged in depth in looking at the boundaries, probably 12 years ago, perhaps, maybe even more than that. We had a demographic study again in 2014, and then again in 2017, and now we're in 2019 and are looking at that. And all along the way, we're watching the numbers saying, pretty soon we're going to run out of capacity in a few of our buildings, and we have arrived. A few of our buildings have more students than there is capacity. And so as that is the main motivator, there have been other topics that have also come up. We've talked a lot about equity and the demographics of our schools. We've talked about how we have some elementaries that split, some going to Lincoln, some going to Ordine East in a couple of our schools, and we've heard from families that they'd like those students to feed to middle school together. That's been a part of this. Our immersion programs have been a part of the conversation as well. There are many, many topics that are considered as we go through this work. And so I'm really glad that the students were involved. They took a very bold approach to many of the scenarios and pushed others even a little farther. So maybe they'll talk about that when it's their turn. I'm not sure if they were planning on that or not. But I also want to talk about social media again tonight. You know, it can be a fun way to connect with our family and our friends and share things. And it can be an effective communication tool. We use it when we talk about winter weather and share information about the district. Over the last few weeks, however, we've seen some inappropriate use of social media in our schools and in our community. There have been some general threats made that cause fear and concern. And I want to urge families to talk with their students about the appropriate use of social media. I'm going to ask you to monitor their use of it. Know what your kids are doing on social media. What are they saying? Who are they connected with? And what are they reacting to? And encourage them to report anything inappropriate. Of the issues that have happened, as soon as it was reported to us, we were able to investigate and react pretty quickly. Usually within an hour, we know exactly what's going on and can address the situation. So again, we really encourage you to share anything that concerns you or scares you to an adult that you trust so that we can respond to any of those situations. It's like the saying goes, if you see something, say something. And we would appreciate knowing as soon as possible. I mentioned winter weather a minute ago, and I have to say, when I was with the student groups today, they were really encouraging me to call entirely next week as a snow day. I disappointed them in that and said, I don't think that's going to happen. But we are to the point of the school year where we're talking about winter weather. I want to remind everyone to be mindful of the weather. Information on our strategies for handling any weather situations is available on our websites. And any delays or cancellations are announced through our phone system, social media, the radio, the television. I know that when the weather is turning bad, our following at the district goes up quite a bit because all of the students are turning into our social media channels. We try to make weather decisions as early as possible when we know. And you also know, because you live in Duluth with us, that predicting the weather here can be a little tricky. And so we try to do the very best that we can as early as we can. I know that there have been many, many activities in our schools. And so we will now turn to our student representatives for their reports. Who's going to start? All right. Vanessa. Go ahead,
Vanessa. Today at East, a diverse group of students participated in a discussion with the superintendent, Gronseth, to voice opinions on the school boundary study. I was really grateful to see a lot of diverse students there and be able to have a voice in how the new school boundaries will look. So I think because we have to remember that we're doing it for the students, so it's good that we have everyone's opinion. That being said, over the past couple of weeks, East students have been participating in the Animal Allies Drive. We have collected over 200 items for dogs in the shelter. And with winter coming, basketball, hockey, boys swimming, and skiing tryouts have begun, which is a little bit difficult because there's no snow. And tonight at East, there's a talent show, and it will continue on Thursday at 7. On Friday is the Christmas City of the North Parade, where the East Band will perform. And right before Thanksgiving on Wednesday, East is hosting a blood drive put on by ABO Hounds. I encourage anyone who can participate to participate, and it is not too late to sign up. Lastly, juniors have begun campaigning for the position of student representative, and we will know the results next month.
Go ahead, Natalie.
All right. So we also met with Superintendent Gronseth just today to talk about the boundary studies. And while doing that, I was surprised by how, as peers, we were able to come to the same consensus. And I think that's very important, that students and how we feel about it is heard by you guys. And I urge you all to come and meet with us again to talk about the boundary studies. We can possibly get more people to talk about it because it is important, because we feel the direct impact of the school district, and we know what repercussions will be felt by the boundary studies, and we also recognize what we need to be changed. So that's important. Also, we had a blood drive last week ran by Key Club, which was highly successful. We had a lot of students participate and were able to fulfill our goal for our amount donated. Along with this, we are currently having our annual food drive ran by student government. A few weeks ago, our senior class met in Wynn to discuss the opioid crisis and were exposed to a conversation from an organization called Change the Outcome. This was beneficial to raise awareness of the opioid crisis and learn techniques to save anyone having an overdose. DASH, our after-school program, has continued to be successful in providing students to get opportunities from tutors. Both NHS students and tutors from the local universities help out after school for students in need. Hockey, skiing, math team, and swimming has started, along with dance team, and we have begun auditions for one act, which will begin just this week. Our music programs have also been active in the community. We actually have an orchestra concert tonight happening right now, so I bet it's beautiful. Our band will be in the Christmas City of the North Parade, and they also have an indoor marching show next Tuesday. And then lastly, debate has had a successful season. 2 members of debate, Sam Gilbert and Nikolai Bremen, are the first runner-ups for national qualifiers. So that's very cool.
Great, thank you, Emma. Done? Okay, cool. There is always so many activities going on at both the high schools, and it's really rich to just really get a picture of it from you both, and continue again to keep inviting us as board members and the community to the variety of music, theater, arts, and athletic activities. So thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the schedule of meetings and events, and I just want to remind the board that at this point anyways, our next scheduled meeting is on December 9th, which is our Education Committee. December 10th is our HR and our Business Committee. And then December 17th will be our regular school board meeting. That is also the night of the annual Truth and Taxation meeting, which will be a part of our meeting. So just wanted to remind you on that. And then the next item on the agenda is our report of our standing committees. And so we'll start with the Education Committee, and Chair Lofold of that committee, if you could present. And we'll welcome the staff up. Okay.
Thank you, Chair Lafler-Kemp. This is the education report from a meeting that was held last Wednesday, actually, November 13th. We moved it from the Monday, which was Veterans Day, to Wednesday. Just a shout out to new dad, Assistant Superintendent Jeff Horton. Congratulations. Those of you that might not know, we welcomed in a new member to Jeff Horton's family, and we just are wishing you the best from the board. So congratulations. We're going to start with our Education Committee report, and again, it's always kind of informational. We had just a few things going on, and I know there's a lot of it on our agenda, so as school board members and hopefully as my community, you can watch it online or you can look at our agenda. I'm going to try to be brief so that our conversations on other topics can have some time. It's 8 o'clock already, but I appreciate those of you that are still here. Thank you very much. We appreciate your attendance. We appreciate your comments at the podium. We listen, and I hope that you'll watch more, come to the committee meetings, reach out to us, email, text, call. I appreciate that. So we had some informational items. We always start out with the Assistant Superintendent Horton's report. And this month, Mr. Horton just kind of did a review of our safe and welcoming schools and our MTSS happenings in our schools. He also gave us an update, which was really informational and a good update on our out-of-school suspension meetings and where we're going with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. We also heard about our Quality Steering Committee, and because we had somewhat of a light agenda, I really appreciated Assistant Superintendent's willingness to just kind of elaborate, and we asked a little bit more questions because we knew that we could really dig into some of these topics. There was just some additional highlights that Assistant Superintendent covered: our early childhood programming. He reviewed Section 504 plans. We talked a little bit about community schools and about our district-wide CIT, which then continued later in our program or in our meeting. Then next, Director of Curriculum and Learning, Curriculum and Instruction, what do we call it? Monthly report from Gail Netlin. We just really briefly read over her comments and her direction. She was not able to attend our meeting, but she gave us just what she's working on, the October 28th Certified Staff Development Day, and reviewing that feedback, and then creating a fact and question page to follow up for exit ticket questions. She also gave us information that our course catalogs for our middle school and high schools are probably in the last of revisions, and they'll be presented to us as a board in December. And again, she updated us on the curriculum and standards work. We do have an English language standards review going on this year, so we'll be looking at that. They had a meeting. The Minnesota Department of Education is having a meeting tonight at Denfeld, kind of reviewing the English language learner standard updates. I wonder if that was being held. I mean, it was all over their website, so I'm sure it is. I wish we could have attended, but we didn't. That was Gail Netlin's report. Members of the board, it's recommended that the Duluth School Board receive both of these reports as informational. Next, we had quite a lengthy document, and we appreciate the hard work of all of our principals and their CIT teams. Thank you so much for completing your school's goals, your school's focus, the root causes that you are trying to address, the different programming that uniquely is going to serve to improve your school. And I, as a board member, just really appreciated the detail, the hard work, and the commitment that you have of continuing the work in improving and learning for all students. So we looked at, and we have, and it's on board book for any community member to upload, is the, I think we have 13 schools, so 13 schools, elementary, middle school, and high school, right? Their continuous improvement teams, what is it called? School improvement plans. So, again, recommended that the Duluth School Board receive those CIT plans as informational. We had 6 grant applications. Grant applications are asked to come through the boards for approval before they actually apply. So we had 6 of them, and I'm sure you reviewed them, and we are grateful for the hard work of staff that go out for these grants. That brings me to an action item. It's a resolution. And I'm going to go forward with that resolution. It's from the Minnesota State High School League, and it is Resolution E-11-19-3687. It's the resolution of the school board supporting Form A, and it's an application to Minnesota State High School League Foundation. And it reads, whereas the Minnesota State High School League Foundation was formed to provide support for Minnesota high schools' youth to participate in athletics and fine arts, whereas the District 709 Duluth School Board recognizes the value of student participation in extracurricular activities, and whereas the Minnesota State High School League Foundation is offering grants and funding to assist school districts in recognizing, promoting, and funding extracurricular participation by high school students in athletic and fine arts programs. Therefore, be it resolved that the Duluth School Board supports the district's application to the Minnesota State High School League's Foundation for Form A grant to offset the student activity fees. I move I move Resolution E-11-19-3687.
Thank you, Member Lofold. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Member Sandstead. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor of Resolution E-11-19-3687, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 6-0. You can go on, Chair Lofold.
We had 2 CHIP requests that when we accept this committee report will be accepted as properly requested. It's Lester Park's Wolf Ridge, and it's an externally sponsored ski trip by the community that is involved in Nordic ski. It's to West Yellowstone, Montana. It is recommended that the Duluth School Board approve the externally sponsored West Yellowstone Nordic ski trip and also approve the extended trip request for Lester Park's Wolf Ridge. We have 3 diploma requests to celebrate tonight. The following students have met all graduation requirements for the Duluth Public Schools and should be awarded a diploma. It is Raphael Samuel Terry Jr., Jaden Anderson, and Jaden Gus Bodell. So congratulations to these 3 new Duluth Public School graduates. We have 2 data share agreements, one with the Duluth Area Family YMCA and MIN as peacemakers. Those 2 data requests are up for us to approve, and it's recommended that as a board we accept the data sharing agreements. This concludes the Education Committee meeting. We are going to be looking at policy updates in the future. I thank my team for a well-run meeting and an agenda with information, and appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Chair, Education Committee Chair, Member Lofold. It's been moved by Member Lofold. Is there a second? Second. Okay, seconded by Member Sandstead. Is there any discussion on any items? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 6-0. Thank you again, Chair Lofold. The next item on our agenda is our HR committee, and that will be Chair of that committee, Member Kirby.
Thank you. We met, I'm not sure the date, but we met. November 12th. And the first item in our report is always the staffing report action item. Mr. Swirsky, do you have anything to say, or is there any questions?
Go ahead. It's on. Nope, the wrong one's on. Okay, go ahead there.
Okay, this is just the normal transactions that have taken place since last month of increases, reductions, hires, and resignations, terminations.
Okay.
Thank you. The next action item was approval of the hourly substitute pay rate sheet, which is necessitated by an increase in the minimum wage that was effective January 1st, or will be effective January 1st. Do you want to speak to that briefly?
What we've done with the sheet that's included in the packet is these were the minimum wages that we had previously, the $9.86, and we brought that up to the new minimum wage of $10 an hour. That will be effective January 1st, 2020. And then because we were encroaching on our $10 an hour rates, we increased that another 15 cents to the $10.15 for the previous $10 an hour rates. The next tier would be $10.50, and we felt that tier was far enough apart where we left those rates where they were. We indicated on these how many of these are hourly positions. These are people that are paid by the hour, usually less than what would be in a contract event, so usually less than 12 and a half to 14 hours a week. The others that we've identified, these are substitutes. When they're brought in to substitute in these positions, those are the rates that were included for that.
Thank you. This is an action item, so we can approve that with the board, or with the committee report, I think. Next are listed as informational items, but we should go into this. The first is the superintendent search update, and I'll just review that in brief. The process we've gone through, we sent out RFPs to 7 firms. 5 of them returned, and we wish to interview 3 of them in more detail. One of those 3 dropped out, and so we were left with 2. Minnesota School Board Association and a firm called BWP. They came on, I wrote it down here, the date I had, here it is here, the 14th, and presented each of them for 45 minutes, or we had a 45-minute presentation, or 45-minute time frame where they presented, and we were able to ask a few questions, and all of this, I think, is available for viewing. At this point in time, our timeline suggested that we would vote on one of these firms. Now there's one of 2, unless for some reason we do this again. And so I'll, at this point, I think, open that up for discussion, since as a board we have not been able to discuss this since the presentations.
So we can have a discussion. We can have someone make a motion for either of the firms. We can, at the end of the meeting that we had the RFP presentations, people left before we were able to do any further discussion. So we didn't have a quorum to continue that. So this is where we're at. And so I am looking for feedback on if you want to move towards a motion for either of the firms, or if you want to have any other discussion on process. Okay. Member Lofo?
I'm going to support that we start with a conversation. If we make the motion, then I think it becomes kind of almost like we're trying to outdo one of the companies or the other. I'd rather just have some conversation about what kinds of things we saw in the presentations and where you're going. I'll tell you right now that I'm going to be listening very carefully to every one of you, because there are pros to both companies and there are cons to both companies. And I've done a lot of research, and I know some strong things, and I know some challenges or some things that don't make me comfortable. And so I'm waiting for you to convince me as to why you're thinking one way or the other. And I'd like you to, talk a little bit too about what you discovered. I heard my community talk about building trust. And I want to, I think too that we have got to select a firm that for some reason they gave us in 45 minutes, which is a stretch to do, to give a sense that we can trust them. So I'm listening, and I'm excited for this journey. There's a part of me, I'll tell you right now, that I think as long as we do our homework, and as long as we are working hard and working together as a team, I think that it doesn't matter what firm. I really truly believe that. Sometimes when I've looked at also, when I talk to my children about schools to attend or children, I always say, I think if you do your work as parents, you know, I think that's a big part of it. I think if we do our work as a board, we will find success in either firm. But that being said, I know that there are some special qualities of each firm that all of us have valued. So I look forward to hearing from you. So speak up.
Member Sandstead.
I couldn't be there in person on Thursday, but I did watch and appreciated the information from both agencies. And as my colleague, Member Lofeld, said, I think both of them have attributes that would be beneficial. And I absolutely agree with the sentiment that either one will work for us and that we need to be the ones, not just the board, but we as the district community, we as staff, we as community members need to be the ones who are really active in this search. And that the consultants are a facilitator. They are not decision makers, and they're not handing us a candidate or standing in the way of us locating candidates. So I think that's important to remember as well. There's a number of considerations, I think. I'm leaning towards supporting us going with BWP in that they have more experience with districts of our size. And I think it's not so much the numbers as it is sort of the spotlight and community pressures and interest in the process, and knowing that in larger districts there is more scrutiny. I don't know why I can't pronounce that right now. Scrutiny. Thank you, Dr. Kirby. And so I think that to me is a favorable element for BWP in looking at their experience. At the same time, the individuals that they have sent from their organization, I don't believe have Minnesota experience yet, which I was hoping for. So that's one thing I'm thinking about at this point. I'll think about my other thoughts and come back.
Member Sands, excuse me, Member Oswald.
Thank you. I also believe that MSBA or BWP will be a great choice either way. But what pushes me in one direction versus another is the number of people that spoke in favor of one company versus another. And my focus here has been about equity, and it has been about reaching all of our kids. And they did talk about kids, and they researched us, and they, spoke the language that I was looking to hear. It could be all a show, but I have to believe, because I'm hopeful, that they know what they're doing, and they can bring us candidates that may think outside the box and may think outside of what our region currently has. I believe they'll have better contacts outside of our region than MSBA, because granted they are the Minnesota School Board Association, and they're connected to the National School Board Association to find other candidates, but those aren't personal contacts, and they actually have to work to get them. But I also want to support our communities in color that want to put their faith in BWP. So that's where my vote is going to go.
I beat you.
Member Kirby.
Thank you. I will echo what people have said. I could see good points in both. I think that when I thought about the criteria that I was looking for initially, I wanted a firm that would make a large number of candidates aware of our opportunity, but also a large number of candidates that would choose to apply. They may know of the opportunity, but we have I don't know if it's a reputation, we have a story and a history, and I think people are going to be aware of that. And so somehow I wanted the firm to be able to tell that accurately, realistically. I'm not sure that BWP could do that, and maybe MSBA would do it in the opposite direction and not be realistic that way. But that was one thing. I think I wanted a diversity of candidates, and it came through to me that all of them are really going through the same areas. They're all going to whoever we want them to ask, whether it's the Minnesota School Board Association, the National School Board Association, the National Superintendent Search Association. Then they mentioned black school administrators and Latino, so forth. I think that we lead the process, as people have mentioned, and it's up to us to do the due diligence and say, this is what we want you to do for us. I was concerned about the people that came and talked to us. They tried to sell themselves, which I get, rather than their firm, it seemed to me. And I did a little research on the firms or the school districts that they were currently engaged in searches with. One of them was Madison, where I happened to live for 10 years, and it's close. And if you look on the Madison website, you can see exactly what BWP is doing. Is it impressive? It's no different than most of the others would do. They had an online survey that got 1,800 responses, most of them from people who worked in the school district or were parents there. The profile that the community developed, if you look at all the profiles of all of the districts, they all look alike, really. Everybody, including us, wants the perfect person, who's trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind. I mean, all of the things. They're a good listener. They are culturally competent. They're interested in equity. They want to reduce achievement gaps. They all say the same thing, which is good. I mean, that's what we should all be looking for. They had 2 community meetings. This is in Madison, a town of 250,000 with 27,000 students. They had 2 community meetings, and there were about 36 people at each one. They have 18 applicants. I don't know how many they told us they would get for us, but as of now, they have 18 applicants. And I don't know anything about them. It doesn't say, but they're 18. And so I think, remember, Lofald wanted 70 or something, but I don't think we're going to get 70. I mean, that's what they did. If you look at all of the current searches they're doing, the people that are leading them are on their board of directors, not the ones that we were. We had no choice in who was going to be our facilitator. Dr. Hill, their executive director, and some of the other people, one of the other ones was a former superintendent in Virginia. A lot of experience. That's not who we would have as our facilitators, and that concerned me. If you look at the number of searches they've done, I bet, I didn't calculate it out, 50%, 6 to 75% were in suburban Illinois districts, or South Carolina or Virginia, where one of their other directors is from. That's been their focus. There was one sometime in the past from Minnesota, and that was Edina, and I don't know when that was. That was the only Minnesota connection I had. And that concerned me a bit because I think that one of the characteristics I think that we need in a superintendent is someone who is well-versed in Minnesota school finance and all the problems surrounding that. And that's not always easy to learn, as I found out, and I think we all do. So that was a concern of mine. So I've gone back and forth, and that's it. I think I'm concerned about potential parochialism of MSBA. I mean, I see that as and so I need to make sure that they would get outside of the state as much as possible and get other candidates. So those are my thoughts right now.
Thank you, Member Kirby, and then Member Eder.
I'm going to take a slightly different view, and I'm going to say the consulting firm that we choose does make a difference. Because I just came off of a search last year searching for the president of the College of St. Scholastica, and what I can tell you as to why the search firm is important, and the search firm that you choose is absolutely integral to having a successful search, is because a qualified and reputable search firm is going to be there to help craft the way that the job description looks. And more importantly, because we're not just looking for an individual to come in for a job description, but we're really looking for a leader for our district. And when I sat through and listened, what stood out to me with BWP is that when they spoke about Duluth, you could clearly tell that they had done their homework, and when we as a board sort of had a few things to maybe say, okay, well, Duluth, we have all these problems, the consultants, as is their jobs, were the ones to say, no, you don't realize all of the good things that you have happening here. And we do have a lot of great things happening here in the district, and what we need is a search firm that is going to amplify that message. Now, that being said, we are not a utopia. We have significant issues, especially when it comes to issues of equity and inclusion. And when we work with a firm, we need to make sure we're working with a firm that has an experience and has a history and has the language and tools and to be able to make sure that our search, as we look for our next leader for this district, has that same viewpoint, right? So that they're coming here thinking about equity and inclusion, and an astute superintendent candidate is going to be looking for specific language within the leadership profile to figure out as to whether or not our district is serious about equity and inclusion. So when you work with a search firm and you help shape that leadership profile, you need to have consultants and you need to have a search firm that has experience with that. And lastly, I do want to point out that in talking about Duluth, BWP mentioned several times students, and not just students, they use the language kids. I'm here because of kids. And at the end of the day, the superintendent and the board, as in us, are here to serve our students. And so it's important to me that when you have a search firm coming forward, that they understand that the end product of what they're getting is a superintendent who's going to serve the students of our district. So that's why I am going to give my support to BWP. Thank you.
Okay, I think I will go next, right? Okay. So I want to agree with Member Eder that the firm that we choose does make a difference. And so for me, part of that was looking at when we hire a consultant, we're hiring someone that will give us a good process, will work with us through a good process. We're hiring someone, I think, that will work with our HR staff also to make sure we have a good process that's transparent, that involves the community, that brings in a range of candidates. So like Member Kirby, I also went out and made some phone calls and did some background research, and I am leaning, well, I think there were some good points with BWP. I am leaning towards the School Board Association, and some of the reasons I'm leaning towards the School Board Association is because I think they also will bring us as a board through a good process. Their different staff come from many different backgrounds, but they do also come from our background as school board members, and so they will see the process through the lens of that we need to see it through as school board members. So that's important to me, that we have a good, transparent process. So I also did contact board members of the two communities that the School Board Association did a search with, Moorhead, as well as Winona. And one of the quotes, if you will, from the Winona school board member. It was actually similar to what she told me, and then it was in an article in our School Board Association newsletter. But they were looking for an extremely transparent process that heavily involved the community and staff, as well as strong facilitation to keep us on task. And they felt they got that. They felt that the School Board Association was very accessible to them and really had a lot of community meetings and provided the kind of support to the board that they needed to come to a good decision. So they were very happy with the NSBA. I also contacted, like I said, Moorhead, and some of the comments that were made by the Moorhead school board members I talked to is they, like us, have a new board that hadn't been through a superintendent search process. So they wanted, again, to make sure they were following good processes as school board members. They also have some diversity in their community, and so they were looking at how they could involve more Native American and African Americans in their particular process. So we talked a little bit about how they felt the School Board Association did that in their community. And they were very happy with and I could highlight some other things, but they're a board similar to us, where we have not been through, any of us, a search for a superintendent. And their community, there is diversity. There is 47% free and reduced lunch in Moorhead. So I guess for me, I am leaning towards wanting to support NSBA because I feel that where they will walk us through a good process. They do have the knowledge and they do have the resources, being a part of a national association as well. And they did touch on the many ways they could do a reach to with different organizations to bring a broad, diverse group of candidates. I really also am concerned about accessibility, so we can have all the community meetings we want to have, and having someone in state, I think, will allow that as well. So those are a few of my thoughts on and some of the work that I did. I did some other research also on BWP too. Okay. Go ahead, Member Loeffel.
Good job. Good job. We've really done a lot of our homework, and we've really taken a lot of time to think this through. I'm really interested in a decision tonight, because I think that we want our HR to be able to move forward with our next step. Our timeline looks to me to be, you know, if we don't make a decision tonight, then we're really behind in our timeline. I'm also kind of looking for, doesn't have to be, this is by nature the way I like to be. I like to have a consensus. I'd like to have a 6-0 vote supporting the firm we want. Member Eder, you really have a nice way of making it very clear about, you know, what you feel BWP can share and what they're good at. I somewhat trust your instincts. You've been through this before, and so you bring a lot of credibility to your words. Not that anybody else doesn't. David, I'm really, really glad that, you know, you looked at Madison. I looked at them earlier before we actually had that, and I knew that they were. I was looking at how they were choosing, and I just didn't go back. But we've all done our homework. We all have good points and bad points or challenges. I reached out to even some other people that I work with. I am on the board of school administrators, led by Executive Anthony Kinkle, who works with superintendents across the country. He's been a leader just asking him to share some ideas. And, he says, be careful about national firms too. They're good. He's not going to not, but, they're not the end-all and be-all either of the search firm process, and that they have some ways of being kind of in a good old boy type of network. If you look at BWP's website, I sometimes see, I'm going back to what our community says about we have to trust. There has to be credibility. There has to be transparency. And that bothers me a little bit about BWP, is that I don't feel they were as transparent. I look on their website, and they might claim that they have 45 associates, but they don't give us much background. There's 9 women. They say they have, I think one of our community members emailed us about, their 35% of associates of color or of women, and that's not necessarily true. If you really click on all the links and count, they have 45 associates, 9 are women. Can't really tell the ethnicity because they don't publish that information. Their board of directors is pretty heavily seasoned white men, led by a talented president, I'm sure. But I'm just saying, let's not be deceived, about what's put out there sometimes. Now, I'm not saying I'm voting against BWP, but I am saying I'm cautious about what we're assuming they will provide. But, in my heart, I know Minnesota School Board Association. For all their good points and their limitations, I know what I'm going to get. I know I'm going to get an opportunity to have them accessible. I know I'm going to get an opportunity to, they know us. They can sell us as we can sell our city to other firms, but they've got a good understanding of our state and our community. I think their reach could be okay, much like Member Kirby said. BWP is stationed out of Illinois, and if you look at their searches, and actually you can't find, you'd really have to go to their current searches, because when I contacted every Minnesota school board, school district that they listed as Minnesota, and they either did that under another search firm because they merged as a 3, because none of them that contacted me, and out of there's like 17 Minnesota schools on their list. Only 4 got back to me, but none of the board have worked with them. And one of them had been on the board for 12 years. So I don't know where their Minnesota connection is. Again, not my biggest, my 2 biggest challenges are their accessibility. And I'm wondering financially, Minnesota School Board Association comes in a little bit less. Tim, could you remind me?
Your light is on.
Okay, so their consulting fee and their advertising fees, and there's a discount for their workshop. It would come to one of the sums would be $18,900. Figure $19,000. That's less expenses, and I threw in like an estimated $4,000 for expenses. They'd be at $22,925. The things that are going to happen with expenses are going to be the cost for bringing your candidates in and the distance they travel, and most likely the number of times that the recruiter members are working with the community.
Thank you. Go on, Member Lofold. I think you were still talking.
Can you also give us BWPs?
BWP had an initial consulting fee of $20,000. Expenses there were district paid. I estimated a little higher, between $5,000 and $9,000. Advertising would be, I made an assumption of about $4,000. I did that. That was about the same for both. Their totals would be, with the advertising, it would be a range of about $29,000 to $33,000. And again, that's an estimate.
I don't want to make it over over finances, really. And when you're talking about the next incredibly successful and exciting opportunity of a new superintendent, I think, you know, 10,000 to 11,000 probably isn't in the scope of things all that, you know, monumental. I'd go that route. But I do worry a little bit about financial, because I kind of see it could have a creep effect. I think Member Trinka said that, and I really wish he was here tonight to add to our conversation. So, but I do worry a little bit about financial, about the BWP creeping up there because of their travel costs, and because if we are bringing in significant candidates from across the area, they'll have. But I want MSBA to bring us candidates from around the country as well. I'm still not ready to make a one way or the other necessarily. I'll let other people speak.
Member Kirby?
Thanks. I mean, I agree with Member Eder that the firm can make a difference. Not that it will, it can. Looking back, I think that BWP made a better sales pitch. They were better salesmen. But I'm not sure trust may not be the right word. The gentleman said he was involved with Reimagine Minnesota. Well, I looked at that, and nowhere could I see how he could be. That's a lobbying group for metropolitan school districts in Minnesota. That's essentially what they do, and it's association. So I don't know how he was involved, and he used that as saying, well, I'm involved in equity in Minnesota. And the other person said, well, my best friend lives in Wayzata or something. That's fine, but I don't know how that really makes information or inference about Minnesota. I don't know. That just seemed to me they were prepared, I think in some ways, you're right, but in some ways they weren't, and that's one way I wasn't. I do think that their experiences, I would be much happier with BWP if I had a choice in who I got to be the consultants and work with us. I think that if you looked at the group as a whole or their website, yeah, there were some people that probably had more experience and broader experience. I would appreciate that more. I guess it was the two people that we were given to say, these will work with you, and I don't know how they were chosen when the proposal was sent, unless Mr. Swarsky has some idea how they choose those.
Yeah, they were assigned, I think it was by Dr. Hill, their director.
Okay. You done, Member Kirby? Okay. Member Eder?
I would just caution about how we speak about either firm, especially I think it's important that we focus on the things that the firm can do for us in a positive manner, as opposed to talking about inferences that have negative connotations, because I don't think it reflects all that positively on us as a board. The other thing that I'll just say is, well, actually, no, that's all I'm going to say. There, I'm done.
Thank you, Member Eder. Member Sandstedt is next.
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we engage BWP to conduct our superintendent search.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion has been made to involve BWP to conduct our superintendent search by Member Sandstedt. It's been seconded by Member Oswell. Discussion? Okay. Member Kirby?
I do think I'd like Member Trinka to be part of it, which she isn't now.
Okay. Member Lofold?
I wish to, but it's a tough job sometimes to make tough decisions, and tonight we have to make it. We have to go forward. I think that we have to embrace a firm and work hard with them. As much as I BWP was my first choice in our ranking when we were hiring consulting. They were my first choice at the end of the presentations. It was really only in looking at other items that I really started to kind of work at it. And I actually, go with kind of my gut instincts. But again, having conversation with my board members, sometimes my gut isn't always the right way either. And so I have to listen to the wise words of people who see things the way for what they do. I like the hard work, the research. I'm going to make the decision today, and so let's vote. I'm going to support BWP.
Oh, I thank you. I agree. My first choice when we first looked at all of the things was BWP as well. After the presentations, I could see both more a little bit. It's a hard choice, and I think that I still think I would like different consultants, but I don't have a choice on that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Member Eater?
I'm probably pretty sure both are probably keeping track of what we're doing here in this meeting right now, so that's just another thing to consider.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Are we ready to vote on the resolution to have BWP be our consultant? Okay. It's been, again, moved by Member Sandstead, seconded by Member Oswald. All in favor of choosing BWP for our consultant, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. I am still deciding, to be honest. Yeah.
I have to write it down. So.
I want us to, as a board, gain from. Can I still discuss? Yes, I can. Right. Okay.
You're the chair, I guess.
Yeah. I want us to come to a decision. I express my support stronger for NSBA, school board, NSBA. But I also want us to move forward. And so we raise some concerns, and we'll keep raising concerns if we go with BWP in the planning stages of the process, just like we would with NSBA. So I will vote in favor of it. I have hesitation, but I will vote in favor of it. So if I'm hearing it, we have 5-1. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Member Sandstead?
Yeah, I think then we should take this opportunity to discuss the next steps. It wasn't clear to me whether or not the board is establishing a job description, or we're doing that in leadership. Okay. And I think we should establish when that's going to happen, who is going to be the board liaison to BWP, how we're going to create, if we are going to create, a search advisory committee. And I think that's all information that we should figure out as soon as possible here. So I'd like to make those decisions.
Thank you, Member Sandstead. Could we go back to this vote to just make sure? So we had a 5-1 vote. Okay, so I just want to confirm we're done. It's been recorded. Okay. Member Kirby and then Member Lofold.
Okay, I don't know if this is apropos, but I want to make everybody aware that I'm supporting the board entirely. So if we can change and make it unanimous so that the BWP knows that we're all behind them, I would do that. I have no problems with that. So can I make a motion that we make it unanimous? I mean, if that's...
Sure. Do I have to record that?
Yes.
So, do we have a...
Revote it?
No, I don't get to revote. It's a new motion just to...
Okay,
Does
so
it take
it's...
a motion to do that, or can you just change it?
I don't know.
You can figure it out later. I'm just writing it down.
Okay, we could, yeah, I think we need to make a motion, Member Kirby, to, okay. Member Sandstead, just 1 minute, please. Okay?
Go ahead, Member Kirby.
Oh, okay. I would move that we make the previous vote unanimous.
I second.
Okay. It's been moved by Member Kirby. It's been seconded by Member Eater. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay. Member Eater.
Yeah, there
Go
we
ahead.
go. There we go. Okay. I just want to thank Member Kirby for switching his vote and showing his support as we move forward as a board and we get started on this process. So thank you.
Thank you. Member Lofold.
I too want to just thank the members of the board for a good discussion, and to Member Eater's, remarks too. It is hard. These are two very highly qualified companies, and we are trying to figure out which is the best fit. And I asked all of you to be honest with how you came to your conclusions, and I too. And so there will be times when maybe a comment comes out that sounds negative about the other firm because we're trying to share what we valued in the other firm. So I'm hoping, if you're listening, firms, that they don't see this as a message that, we weren't supportive or that we challenged or that we're unhappy or that we have to try to be transparent for our community. I struggled with that during the day today because I knew that some of the concerns I had and some of the support I had my community might not understand where I'm coming from with it, but I just have to hope that they trust me to do my homework. So I too just want to, again, share that I'm confident in the firm that we hired, and I'm excited, and it will continue to be work, but enjoyable work for all of us.
Thank you, Member Lofold. So we have a motion on the table. It's been moved and seconded. So just want to, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we just voted to unanimously support BWP to be our consulting firm. Thank you.
I just want to remind you then where this goes from here in the business committee. You will be authorizing the board chair to enter into a contract with BWP, so we can start moving on that immediately.
Okay, thank you. Member Sandstead.
So I guess I'm looking. I'm looking for us as the board to decide what that looks like in moving forward with BWP. Yes, our board chair is going to sign that contract. But next steps, fleshing out all the decisions, as we experienced last night in terms of the boundary study and working with a consultant, there's a lot of things that are decisions that are made along the way that don't happen in board meetings. And so we need to make a conscious choice as a board who's going to be our contact for those type situations and what parameters we're going to set around that. So I think that at a minimum tonight we should designate someone as a board liaison to BWP. And I'm interested in, I would make a motion, but I don't know who's interested. It's certainly not going to be me. So I want to hear from my colleagues.
Okay. I'd like to step in if I could. In talking with other school boards, often because of the many responsibilities of the board chair, the vice chair does step in. And so I would entertain the vice chair if, in our case, she felt she had the time, but that often has been the case from talking to other school board members. So.
I have seen in pretty important searches like this that there has been designations of co-chair to sort of alleviate some of the work. So that is also a possibility that I've seen.
Okay. Member Oswald?
I wouldn't mind co-chairing with Member Lofald.
Member Sandstead?
Member Lofald, I feel like you and I might have discussed this a while back, and I think that you would be great in this role, and so I'm looking to see if you're interested, but I also really like the idea of a co-chair and would support Member Oswald in that. So I will make a motion, presuming that Member Lofald is willing to co-chair, that Member Lofald and Member Oswald are the co-liaisons to our consultant firm.
Okay, so there's been a motion to have co-chairs and that it would be Member Lofald and Member Oswald. Is there a second to that motion? Second. Okay, that's been seconded by Member Kirby. Member Lofald?
I would be honored to be a liaison. I asked that question, I think, of both of our firms, if that was something that they did. I guess I understand Member Sandstead's, desire to get this set for us, which I think is really important. I just was assuming the next step after the contract is hired is that they will meet with all of us, and then they will tell us if they're, I think if we're given the direction by our board to be the ones that they'll contact, then we will meet with them right away or have a phone conversation with them or something.
Mr. Sorsky, do you want to respond to that from your past experience?
Well, what I would assume from here is based on their proposal, and we let them know that they're the firm that is selected, we'll probably have, it would not be a final contract we would be seeing. We'd be seeing a contract that we can review and go over. Now, I think to the board's point, do we do that as a board? Do we do it with some individuals and share that information? I believe that would be your call. But I agree with Member Lofald too, then once they know they are the firm, they're going to be here shortly to sit down with all of you.
Yes, we touched both companies touched on that in our presentations. Member Sandstead?
I think that I assume that they will come and meet with all of us, and that we'll work on that. What's profile? Leadership profile. But I just know that in terms of setting up that meeting and having all those little details, those things set a direction. And so I think having leadership from our board designated is a good thing for this process moving forward.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. It's been moved by Member Sandstead, seconded by Member Kirby. There has been acknowledgement by Member Oswald and Member Lofald that they would accept the responsibilities. And so all in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay. Then the motion carries, and thank you, Member Oswald and Member Lofald, for taking on that. I welcome it as a parent of a senior this year, and my responsibilities as the chair till the end of the year are time-consuming as it is. So Thank you. I expect you to do a good job. Member Sandsted, do you have something to add?
I do. I think that we should also clarify, we've had a lot of requests for people to participate in a search committee or a search advisory committee. And I think that that maybe isn't something we want to tackle this evening, but I think that we should plan with that first public meeting we have with BWP where we're looking at the, one more time?
Leadership profile.
Leadership profile. I'm going to write it down. That we also just clarify for the public that we will be discussing whether or not we establish a search advisory committee and how we're going to go about that at that upcoming meeting. So just sort of, that's my perspective, and I hope that we're all kind of on the same page with that. Leadership.
Thank you, Member Sandsted. And again, part of the reason we're hiring this search firm is to be walked through a process, and both of the firms talked about that first planning meeting is for us as a board to really kind of start our process as well. So I'm sure that'll be covered. Is there any further discussion around the superintendent search at this point? Then we'll move on, Member Kirby, to the next item, which was the superintendent review process we also went through. Thank you.
Thank you. Just reviewing this as well, the superintendent evaluation process was really based on an MSBA general process. We met in February of this year February of this year for a mid-year evaluation, and which everyone agreed was personal only and not public. The end of the year evaluation was supposed to have taken place at the end of August, but other things were pressing, and so we did it now. Just reviewing, in general, there were 3 goals that the superintendent was evaluated on. 2 were associated with district goals or mission, and 1 was a personal developmental goal. And we developed an evaluation instrument, again based on MSBA advice or models. And each school board, I'll read from this, each school board member was asked to rate the superintendent on the 3 goals on a scale from 1 to 4. And 1 was the lowest possible score, was unsatisfactory, and 4 was a distinguished goal and said it was beyond the pale and did more than the person was asked. We met in private, in a closed session, I should say, and all members of the board had the opportunity to assess the superintendent based on these 3 goals and the instrument rating system beforehand. Written comments were also given and were shared both with the superintendent and with each of us. This meeting, again, is private by statute unless the superintendent wishes not. But there is a summary. And the 3 areas of evaluation were 1, implementation of using the tool for equity. How accountable was the superintendent for that? The second goal was to decrease disproportionate out-of-school suspensions for subjective reasons. And this was according to process targets for the out-of-school suspension plan. And the third goal was completion of the dissertation on which he is working. The summary that I can give is as follows. The overall ranking of the superintendent as rated by the average scores of all the school board members in those evaluation areas that were listed above was in the accomplished/satisfactory area. And that is what we are able to give the community. I think that if the superintendent would like to say anything, he certainly may, but is not required at all. Again, the overall evaluation was in the accomplished/satisfactory area, and this was based on kind of averaging all of the three areas.
Thank you, Member Kirby. Superintendent Groundset.
Thank you. Thank you to all the board members who were involved and present for the conversation. I think it was really good. It was kind of a learning year with this new process and setting goals and trying to set rubrics that would measure it. I think in the future, we went from a process that was very detailed with really too many different areas, and I think now it's gotten down to three specific areas, and I think maybe the right spot is somewhere in the middle. Some of the areas that we worked on are really big areas, and we were able to make some progress on those and feel good about where we were with the tool for equity accountability, the decreasing disproportionate OSS. Well, when we set the goal, we had one thing in mind, and then some things kind of changed with the work that we were doing with some of our partners, and so it kind of changed focus, and then the rubric that we created didn't quite fit where we were working on. So I think that we had some good discussion around that as well. The dissertation completion, while the proposal is complete, and I do have a date for defending that proposal, it's one of the areas that really, because it's a personal goal of mine, I really want to complete that, and it's a challenge because I have to take a lot of time to be able to do that, and so it's finding that balance to be able to get that done. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. I'm appreciative of the feedback as always, and look forward to our continued, I guess 6 months left. That's kind of scary. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Grunstedt. And, I would just add that it was really great, the different types of feedback that in talking to the board as we were doing that process that people wanted to provide to the superintendent in terms of his personal goals as well, and board members offering different ideas for giving him that kind of support. So thank you again for a thoughtful review process. Member Kirby?
Thanks. I just want to reiterate what the superintendent said. Member Trinka and Oswald and I were the ones that were on the committee that developed this. And as the superintendent said, we learned from it. And I think for the next superintendent, it will be much more useful and for both people. But it was much better than the ones I've participated in the past, and I think it'll be improved.
Okay, great. And, that was one area that I think most of us as school board members had gone to some trainings on with NSBA, because they really, over the last couple of years, really focused on boards creating thoughtful review processes. And so I look forward to Member Eder and our board-elect Paul Sanholm participating in some of those trainings as well to get some of the thinking behind superintendent reviews. Member Kirby, do you want to finish up your report? Okay.
Yes, there were we have future items, our nepotism discussion. I think will come next month. Going to wait for that. And so that was the end. So I would make a motion that the HR report be accepted.
Okay, so it's been moved by Member Kirby. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay, seconded by Member Sandstedt. Is there any other discussions on the HR committee report? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the HR report is approved with a 6-0. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, we're going to just take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. We just need to regroup here. Thank you. Okay, board, if we can come on back. Board, if we can come on back so we can continue with the meeting. Yeah.
I'll be quick.
There's cookies and cake. I'm just trying to be sensitive to our students who are here with us tonight and have to get back to. I know.
No, the students.
No, I know the students are, but they were.
I'll proof it for you.
I have an appointment tomorrow.
Do you?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to just get resituated here. Member Oswald left, so Vice Chair Lofold is going to become clerk now. Yep. Okay, so the next item is the Business Committee, and in the absence of Member Trinka, Member Kirby is going to do the Business Committee report, so I will turn it over to Member Kirby. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time and the huge audience, we'll keep this to the point. First of all, we went through financial reports and APU projections. Are there any issues that people wish to bring up for this? We also had a presentation on part 2 of our special education finance problems and issues and procedures. Did CFO Erickson want to say anything, or? Okay. Great. There were no bids, RFPs, or quotes, and we went to a policy and a bylaw, both of which are first reading. New policy 511, which involves fundraising, would replace current policy 10050. Again, this was first reading and is available. Then the bylaw Bylaw 203.2, order of the regular school board meeting. It is the first reading, and that has to do with having a consent agenda. Are there any comments that people wish to make? This is the first reading.
Yeah, let's see.
You want to hold till the end?
Yeah, just go through and then we'll poll like we normally do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Contracts, change orders, and leases. A contract with Upper Lake Foods for district-wide food requirements from November 19th until the end of the year. That purchase price estimated to be $35,000, so it has to come before the board. And it was recommended that we approve this contract with Upper Lakes Food. I'm not sure there's an alternative, which makes it easier. The Essentia Sports Medicine Services and Sponsorship is postponed till next meeting. We discussed a one-year agreement with Costin Group to provide government relations, public relations related services. That is lobbying for us. They are the group that did this last year, and there was a lot of discussion and very positive feedback about the performance and help that they provided for the district at the legislature, which we hope to build on this next year. So it's recommended that the Duluth School Board approve this agreement as well. Superintendent's search firm was a placeholder, and we just discussed that in some detail. There was one change order for the public school stadium track reconstruction with Northland Constructors of Duluth. And Mr. Spooner, do you want to comment on that briefly?
Sure, Member Kirby, members of the board. It was an extension of the construction date, the end date of the construction, to allow the contractor to come back next summer after track season is complete to attempt to resolve or remediate some slight dips in lane 1. So it's no cost change.
Thank you, Mr. Spooner. Okay, Member Kirby, you can continue.
Thank you.
Whoop, Kathy, CFO Erickson, just 1 minute, please. Go ahead.
For number 5, for the superintendent search, we just need to clarify the name of the firm and the dollar amount in your report.
Thank you. Let's see. The contract will be with BWP to perform duties as related to the superintendent's search for Duluth Public Schools, and the amount that has been suggested that we discuss today is $20,400 plus approved expenses, and that is the base amount. Let's see, and we will authorize the school board chair and the chief financial officer to negotiate and execute this contract. Thank you. We had one lease, a 3-year lease for a copier, and that was, let's see, 3 years will cost $8,300 with a $1-year buyout at the end, and I think we've discussed those leases before and found that it's a very good deal for the school district to do that. We have several resolutions that are made each month, but by statute we have to do this. I'll read the first one. I can find what resolution it is here. It's a lot of things. Resolution B 11-19-3688. Acceptance of donations to Duluth Public Schools, whereas Minnesota Statute 465.03 requires the school district to accept donations by resolution expressed in terms prescribed by the donor in full, and whereas acceptance of the donations in accordance with the donor's terms is in the best interest of the Duluth Public Schools, now therefore be it resolved that the Duluth Public Schools does accept the below described donations from said organizations in accordance with the terms set forth herein. Be it further resolved that the Duluth Public Schools wishes to extend its grateful appreciation to these various individuals and organizations. And there were several to Denfeld for the T-shirt fund from a variety of people. $500 from the North Shore Bank to Denfeld Drama Department. Several in-kind. One for a 2007 Toyota Prius to the automotive thing. University of Minnesota gave Laura MacArthur $2,500 for participation in the Good Behavior Game Study. They gave Lowell $2,500 for participation in a University of Minnesota study. Myers-Wilkins received $5,000 for use in STEM programming. There were many donations to Myers-Wilkins for the Books for Kids Literacy Project, including a very generous donation of $1,000 from Harold Frederick, who was one of our former board members many years ago. So thank him. And many other people did this. The Rotary gave Ordinis $2,000 for robotic club supplies. The University of Minnesota also gave Stowe $2,500 for participation in a good behavior game study. And there were many others. I kind of highlighted the big ones, but I move we accept these donations through this resolution.
Thank you. It's been moved by Member Kirby. It's been seconded by Member Sandstead. Is there any further discussion on it? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, resolution B 11-19-3688 has been approved 5-0. Okay, you can go on to the next resolution, Member Kirby.
Thank you. This is Resolution B11, 1936-89. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, that it hereby authorizes the following authorized bank signer, and it's for Head Start. The banking institution will be Harbor Point Credit Union, and the authorized signer will be Thomas Quinn. So I move this resolution.
Second.
Moved by Member Kirby, seconded by Member Sandstead. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Resolution B1119368950. Okay, you can go on, Member Kirby.
The final resolution is Resolution B10193685, an amending resolution establishing combined polling places for multiple precincts and designating hours during which the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election. And these were, if I can get the resolution, amendments that had to be made because some of the polling places that we had used in the past would not be accessible. And so there will be combined polling places for the townships and the city of Rice Lake, and another one for precincts 3, 8 through 14 because of an inaccessible one. So as required, I'll just read the last part. As required by Minnesota statute, section 240B.16, subdivision 1A, the clerk is hereby authorized and directed to give written notice of new polling place locations to each affected household with at least one registered voter in the school district whose school district polling place location has been changed. This notice must be a non-forwardable notice mailed at least 25 days before the date of the first election to which it will apply. A notice that is returned as undeliverable must be forwarded immediately to the appropriate county auditor, who shall change the registrant status to challenge in the statewide registration system. And as I remember, this is not likely to happen, but we need to just in case have this. So I move Resolution B 10193685 as amended. Yeah.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Kirby. It's been seconded by Member Sandstead. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Resolution B10193685, 5-0. Continue, Member Kirby.
Thank you. There were informational items on expenditure contracts, no-cost contracts, revenue contracts, which did not generate much discussion, as I remember. There was no significant property scale update, although all properties are currently being looked at. We received the facilities report for October. Mr. Spooner. I was going to say Swanson. Spooner, would you like to say anything? Any comments?
I think I covered it pretty well last week. If anybody has any questions, I can certainly answer.
No questions, but you did cover it very well last week, and you always cover it very well in your written report, so we appreciate that. Member Kirby, go on. Okay, sorry.
There were no change order signs. The school board committee structure was discussed briefly, as I remember, in conjunction with an agenda-setting policy discussion, and it was felt that these should go forward together. It would be more efficient to do that. And that was it. We have future items in December of a final levy approval, the truth in taxation discussion, the fiscal year 2018-19 audit reports, and then in January we have an organizational meeting and discussion of our legislative platform and more policy updates. So I would move acceptance of the business committee report.
Okay, the Business Committee has been moved by Member Kirby. Can I have a second? Seconded by Member Eder. Is there any items that people want to pull? Member Sanston?
Yeah, I'd like to pull 4C, 5A.
Just 1 minute, please. 4C.
Why do I have 5A? So this doesn't make. Hang on.
4C is order of the regular school board meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
5A4.
5A4. Okay.
And 7H.
Okay. Members, are there any items members would like to pull for discussion? Okay, then we'll start with 4C, that is a revised bylaw with the order of the regular school board meeting, and this is a first reading. Go ahead, Member Sandsted.
Yeah, I know it's just a first meeting, but that means next month is the second reading, and I think that it perhaps is a bylaw that should be held unless decisions are made in December regarding the committee structure as well, because that certainly was, I mean, I know we're looking at consent agenda, but also if we're going to change the standing committees or rename or all those things, I think that it makes sense to do it all in one fell swoop. So I wouldn't expect this to be a second reading that is approved in December. I would expect it to be changed dramatically, is my comment on that. Can I move on, Chair? Or any other comments? Member Lofold.
Just a minute, Member Sandsted. Member Lofold.
So if I hear you right, you know, we've had some conversation about consent agenda, and a lot of us are anxious to see that happen because it moves us along, and then we can have, meaningful dialogue at board meetings, or sometimes board meetings might be shorter, but we'll have a work session maybe beforehand that will hammer out some things, and then our board meeting goes quicker because it's consent. So, but are you saying that should we remove it from December so that it doesn't even become a second reading, or do you want it rephrased, or do you want it? I just don't know what I know what your intent is. I know that we want to do this. We don't want to do it piecemeal. We want to look at 7H, which is our meeting structure, committee structures, and do it all at one time. So I'm unclear what you want us to do next month.
Member Lofold, I am also unclear on what I want us to do next month. So I'm not asking for any action tonight to take it off or anything. I'm just kind of observing that right now I'm not feeling like I want to do piecemeal and just do the consent and leave everything else the same. But that's just sort of my observation about this. As long as, well, no, I'll save it for 7H.
Okay. Thank you, Member Sandsted. I guess I would recommend that, again, it's the first reading. We can discuss it again at the next meeting. I would be in agreement with you, Member Sandsted, that when we do make changes, it would be good to make a number of changes at the same time. And I think we discussed in length, actually, the idea that those discussions would happen potentially with the board, new board member, Sandholm, and with Member Eder after they've both gone through some of the trainings as well. So, that'll be probably discussed a little bit more, but that was a part of that discussion at the committee meeting. Okay, did you have something else to say about this item, or are you wanting to move on? Because I don't see any other discussion. Okay.
that it matters. But
Go ahead, Member Sandsted.
Because we're looking at things that need two readings to approve, they're necessarily going to involve the seating of Member Elect Sandholm. So that will certainly be the case. Moving on to the contract with the lobbying firm.
Member Sandsted, I just want to stop you for 1 minute. I just want to see, did anybody else have any other discussion around C before we move to the next step? I just want to make sure everyone had an opportunity. Okay, go ahead, Member Sandsted.
Thank you. On the lobbying firm contract, last year when we engaged them, I think it was in January, it was kind of a not last minute, but the session had already started. And at that point, I suggested that we should do an RFP and put it out because the process was we had been approached by the Koosman group to engage them. And it seemed like a good idea. I think everybody agreed that it was a good idea to have a lobbying firm. We have the opportunity now to actually do an RFP, even though it's November, we're kind of getting late. I think that there's never too late to do a good process, to open it up. And so that is my opinion, that we should be doing an RFP for lobbying this year. And so it's not a separate item we're going to vote on, but if we were, I would be saying we should be voting to put out an RFP instead of renewing a contract with the Koosman group. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you, Member Sandsted. Is there any other discussion on that item? Member Kirby?
I'd agree if we were starting anew. I think that given the equity we have in that group and what they did for us, it was pretty unanimous from not only board members, community members, and legislators how important they were, that I think that at this point it's best to build on that experience and go forward. But otherwise, if it was starting out anew, I think it's a good point.
I would add that we had a lot of positive discussion at the committee meeting supporting the Koosman group. We also, when we had a presentation with them, I think it was in July, again, they shared the work that they did at that time for us as a board, and at that time there seemed to be a lot of support for kind of the after session update, and I would be in agreement that we continue with them based on input that we've gotten from the community and from last week when we were at the St. Louis County Day breakfast. Had a lot of people come up and ask what our lobbying plan was and hoped it involved the Koosman group. So I would be supporting that. Is there any other comments on that by any other board members? Okay, then the next one you had, Member Sandsted, was, let's see, 7H, and go ahead.
Yeah, and this is kind of a clarification. I'm just thinking about December, and because we changed the way we handled our committees in November to make them full board meetings, but that was a change decided not by the board and had a little bit of challenge with getting a quorum in. I would suggest that for December, we ask that, or we as a board decide that our committees are going to be true committees, and that for business, education, and HR, that they involve no more than 3 board members, and everybody else can watch them on YouTube if they so choose, and just make it easier, because I'm sure we will have plenty of other meetings in the month of December for superintendent search, the tax report, all those things. So I would make it wasn't a motion in the first place that switched us up. It was just an executive decision, I assume, made by the chair to handle it the way we did in November. And so I would say that we should handle it differently in December. We should have our committees be true committees and not board meetings for December. I make a motion to that effect.
For conversation and.
Okay, so a motion has been made to look at the new structure of attendance at the December meetings. It's been made by Member Sandstead, seconded by Member Lofold, and now we have time for discussion. And I guess one of my first questions is actually to Melinda, our staff person, who helps put out the information and that. Do you see any concerns from where you sit? Go ahead, Superintendent Grunstead first, and then Melinda.
When we got this advisory from the Department of Administration, I believe the advisory came from, we reached out to MSBA. We reached out to others to get feedback on how that should be handled. And you did have one of two choices. One is that it is what Member Sandstead is suggesting, and that's historically how it has been, that there were 3-member committees and that there could not be a quorum present and participating. In the advice that we got, it said if you were having a committee meeting with 3 members, you could hold that, and if there were other members of the board present, that they would sit in the audience and not participate in the process. The other is if you are going to have a quorum present and the quorum wants to participate in that discussion, in that meeting, then it has to be posted as a public school board meeting. And so for this month, we knew that a quorum was very often present for committees, and we didn't have an opportunity to bring you together to have the discussion about that beforehand, and so went ahead and posted those as regular meetings, and as you said, had a little bit of a challenge, but we made it. So either way is fine, but we have to be clear about which is which.
Member Lofold?
I'd be in support of Member Sandstead's December strategy of committee meetings. Like she mentioned, we probably have a lot of meetings that will happen. It's the holiday season, and it would be kind of a good test run because, again, if we look forward in the next months with 7H and committee and just taking a look at that, maybe we'll get an idea. We already have set committees. We know there's 3 on business, there's 3 on education, and there's 3 on HR. Is there 3 on HR? Yeah. So those would be the members coming on December 9th and 10th. Only those committee members would come at 4:15. I'd support that.
Other comments? Okay, Member Kirby.
These are still open meetings, though?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember the the advisory was both about kind of how they were posted, which besides then the quorum required, they would be on YouTube. They'd be open meetings just like normally. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Superintendent Grunstead?
Yeah, as I just wanted to share Melinda's comments because I know that they don't come through on the television. So it's just that there can only be 3 participating. So if other members are present, they need to sit on the side and can't text or message or whatever, ask this, do this, because they're truly then participating in the process.
So it would involve some self-restraint maybe for some board members to do that. The other concern is that, let's see, what if the two members that are on the committee aren't, one of the two aren't there? Can another member substitute? Okay, go ahead.
I believe there are named alternates for committees. Am I? Oh, that's just community committees. That's right.
Yep. So, can another board member come on if there is only one member? I'm just curious because I'm sure we may end up with that. Okay, we'll have to check on that. Okay, so there's a motion on the table to try a different structure for December, sticking to the members who are already assigned to the committees. So all in favor of that, the motion was made by Member Sandstead, seconded by Member Lofold. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. You can, any other discussion on any other items? Okay, then the business committee, the motion has been made by Member Kirby, seconded by Member Eder to accept the business committee. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 5-0. And let's just go back to our agenda and see if there's anything left. Okay. We have no special resolutions. And by the way, thank you, Member Kirby, for jumping in very last minute and reviewing the business committee. No special resolutions, no questions. Member Lofold, do you want to make a comment? Okay.
Are we on the other? There's always other at the end. My screen went dark. So okay. I just want to...
Okay. Member Lofold, you can go ahead, and then we do have a student representative that wants to make a comment. Okay?
Oh, you can go first. Okay. I just want to remind board members and encourage us to keep our retreat idea on really early, like mid-January. I'm not so sure, we could talk about that and again, the look at 7H and 4C and all of that to keep that moving forward.
I'll just add to that comment. Member Lofold and I did spend some time getting some ideas from the School Board Association on retreat ideas and potential issues with new board members coming forward, so we look forward to that discussion later. Emma, go ahead.
I know it's late, but we wanted to share with you kind of the consensus that we came up with today, both from our school's perspectives with the boundary studies, just so you guys have that information from us directly as the students. So if possible, could we both have our mics on, if that's okay? Yeah. All right.
So right now, things that are concerning us at East are the large class sizes, the lack of diversity. And I know that Denfeld would benefit from their capacity being further met, and there are a lot of good options to do so. There were 4 options that were presented.
Yeah, so we looked through all 4 scenarios, and overall between both of our groups, we decided that scenario 4 would be best fit. And then that is largely because at the current moment, how we see it is that both populations at Denfeld and East are struggling. Like Vanessa said, large class sizes, lack of diversity. And then on the Denfeld perspective, we don't have as much opportunity available to us. So currently there is a significantly lower selection of classes for options compared to those offered at East. And then also just simple scheduling stuff. We don't have as many opportunities to fit those classes into our schedules at Denfeld because we don't have as many classes actually given to us. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that Emma and I both came to the same conclusion that we favored scenario 4 because we did these studies separately and we go to different schools and we still found the same option favorable.
Can you describe option 4? Yeah, of course. So option 4 would be it would inevitably be moving 1,400 students between the elementary, high school, middle school, but it is making only a 30 student difference between the populations of East and Denfeld. And then that also includes making Lowell a completely, like a sole immersion school, so only dedicated towards immersive programs with Spanish and Ojibwe.
And there'd be a lot more room in the Spanish and Ojibwe immersion school for more students to join, so it could encourage that to happen, and they could follow up with that in high school maybe.
So even from an elementary school perspective, you have that it's an immersion program, and then it's able to grow more at Lowell by it solely being for that immersion programs. And then also the percent of elementary schools going to the middle schools is clear-cut 100% from each elementary school. So if you went to one elementary school, all of the population, 100% would go to the same middle school and high school, which from a parent's perspective even is valuable to keep everyone together.
And if I recall correctly, I think that Denfeld's capacity would be at a higher percent than East, which would be good because it could bring more CITS and AP classes and more opportunities to Denfeld.
Yeah, and we do recognize that it's a drastic change, but in order to mend the inequalities between the two major high schools, in the long run, the benefits will outweigh the immediate effects.
Thank you, students.
That's great.
Superintendent Grunset.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. And I just want to say, this is how I got to spend my day. Mm-hmm. It was amazing talking to our students and their perspective. And we were working with 40 students. And it was, all of the conversation was just as riveting. Mm-hmm. So thank you again.
Yeah. I would add, Emma and Vanessa, that, encourage you because you were able to participate. And I didn't know, but I found out my daughter was a part of that group as well. I didn't know that. But I encourage you, just like I will encourage her, to, keep that conversation with students, keep encouraging them to participate and bring new people with them to any other upcoming opportunities. And thank you both for being so engaged, not only today, but also all night tonight. You're really a valuable part of this, and I hope as you're announcing and encouraging other people to apply for your positions for starting in January, that you will share the strengths and the weaknesses of serving as a student rep on our board. Okay? Thank you so much. Okay, Member Eder.
I would just like to fully support and reiterate everything that Chair Loeffler-Kemp said. Thank you so much. And I also want to bring to attention that you're focused on equity and inclusion, because it really is important that it's coming from you, the students, and you see the inequities between the schools, and you realize that when we all do better, we all do better. So thank you so much.
Okay, is there any other comments? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Member Sandstedt. Is there a second? Seconded by Member Eder. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.